Hey everyone, Frank here from PagerDuty's AI Ops team, and I'm excited to introduce Kishore Yekkanti from Etsy, who's going to be talking to us about how event intelligence and alert grouping helped Etsy conquer their alert storm problems.
Thank you, Frank. Hello, everyone. I'm Kishore Yekkanti, Engineering Manager in the Infrastructure Department at Etsy. In today's session, I'd like to share our journey through PagerDuty's AI Ops offering, Event Intelligence. So let's jump through the slide deck. For those who hadn't heard about Etsy, Etsy is the global marketplace for unique and creative goods. It's home to a universe of special extraordinary items from handcrafted pieces to vintage treasures. As of Q1 2021, we have approximately 4.5 million sellers, 90 million buyers, with a 3.1 billion on gross merchandise sales. We are proud to say 81% of our sellers identify as women, 69% of sellers consider the shop to be their only business, and 97% run shops from their homes. Now that we've seen the scale at Etsy, let me give a quick overview of how we manage large-scale incidents at Etsy. We have approximately 600 PagerDuty users with 60 teams and 150 services. And many teams are on 24/7 on-call rotation. We have a pretty well-defined process for high urgency incident management, which we internally call as large-scale event. It starts with an engineer who observes an abnormal behavior in our observability systems. The first step is to kickstart a conversation in a war room Slack channel. We have incident commanders who are part of leadership, that's director and director plus, and who are responsible for bringing in the SMEs to understand the problem and to create CAN reports, that's like current situation, actions, and needs, and all of this while an incident is ongoing. We have bots that are integrated into our war room Slack channel, and incident commanders can use these bots to send out the official communications to Twitter and status page accounts. And post-incidents, incident commanders will create a Jira ticket, briefly describing the event, and might recommend a postmortem if required. And Etsy prides itself in the blameless postmortem culture, and there's an excellent write-up on our Code as Craft blog, which I linked in the slide if anyone's interested. So that's the life cycle of a large-scale event at Etsy.
And you know, what you've described here is really what we see a lot at large organizations, where when a major outage occurs, the job becomes pulling in the right people for teams to make sure that they can figure out what's going wrong and how to resolve it. But where problems can start to come up in these major outages is that there's going to be a lot of related systems that all start sending alerts at the same time. And those alerts might have valuable information, but they're not actionable. And this is really where an alert storm can start to form, where you're getting all of this data thrown at you, and it's difficult to separate this signal from the noise. And so, Kishore, I'm curious, at Etsy, what sort of metrics do you look at to determine the impacts of these major incidents? And can you tell us a little bit more about what causes alert storms at Etsy?
Sure. Etsy has a pretty strong data-driven culture. We pull all of our incident metrics via PagerDuty API and ingest it into a BigQuery and utilize Google's Data Studio to visualize the incident metrics in various dimensions. This data gives us a lot more visibility on how we as an engineering organization are responding to events across different teams and how much toil we have across engineering. So here are a couple of examples. On the left-hand graph, you could see our high urgency page volume month over month and our total time to resolve in hours for each month. And right-hand graph, which is more interesting, you see 3 lines, each representing mean, median, and P95 times to resolve all the high urgency pages like sleep hour pages. An increase in P95 time to resolve tells us one of 2 things. It could be a one-off, unacknowledged, or unresolved alert, or it could be a symptom of a situation we call as an alert storm. So how does an alert storm look like? It might feel like this, or maybe even like this, but in reality, it's actually looking like this. And one common theme, which you can observe in the last 3 screenshots here, is the number of repeated alerts in a very small time frame. And all of these alerts are triggered for the same underlying problem, which is already actively being diagnosed by the on-call responder. So all these extra alerts triggered are just noise. They neither add any value to the debugging effort, nor give us any extra information about the health of an underlying system. So what causes the alert storm? It could be for various reasons. Cascading events, poorly configured alerts, flapping servers, sudden spikes, and third-party failures. And what's challenging with alert storms is they come in large groups, like say tens of alerts for the same or similar kind of root cause. It's difficult to find signal in the noise of alerts, and on-call responders have to spend time to acknowledge the alerts rather than actively working on the remediation. And mean time to resolve will become useless if we mass acknowledge or mass resolve the entire alert storm.
And so, Kishore, of all of those challenges you raised, what ended up being the big driver for you wanting to try out event intelligence?
That's a good question. Toil reduction is one of our main driver. Also, alert storms take away the precious engineering debugging time while a critical incident is ongoing. The situation is exacerbated if the on-call engineer got paged in the middle of the night, say at 2 a.m., and dealing with the alert storms. So once we observed increase in toil, we started exploring options to deal with our alert storms. Around this time, we stumbled on event intelligence from PagerDuty. And two of the main features which appeal to us are reduction in operational noise with intelligent alert grouping and viewing past and related incidents to gather deep insights. EI seemed to be a perfect use case for dealing with alert storms, especially if you want to group similar alerts intelligently. All you have to do is just tick a tick box and leave the rest of it to PagerDuty's AI to figure out. We've identified few high volume services on PagerDuty and did a 6-week trial with Event Intelligence. And as part of this trial, we had 10 teams participating, and all of them were utilizing intelligent alert grouping based out of because of its zero operational overhead.
And that's what teams really tend to love about intelligent alert grouping is its push button. No one wants to spend time training data or configuring screens. And with intelligent alert grouping, all you really have to do is let the algorithms figure out what's going on in the back end. But for teams that want more control, we also have things like content-based or time-based alert grouping. And of course, with event intelligence, there's always other features that might come up like related incidents. And so, Kishore, I'm curious, can you tell me a little bit more about what rolling out intelligent alert grouping looked like at Etsy and maybe what handling alert storm looks like sort of on the ground?
Yeah, sure. So we did a 6-week trial on few high volume services and saw a significant reduction of alert noise. As you can see in this chart, two of the core infrastructure teams, database infrastructure and Etsy web infrastructure, benefited the most from event intelligence. These two being high volume page services. I also want to highlight one of the recent examples of how alert storms will look in action. What you see here is a PagerDuty service by the name Etsy Web Infra, which has event intelligence enabled. In this case, an alert was triggered because a few host types are serving the wrong version of the code. As you can see here, EI intelligently grouped all the 13 different alerts, which are triggered for a similar reason, that is the host is serving the wrong version of code. In this case, the on-call responder received a single notification rather than 13 of them, and when the incident is resolved, all the 13 alerts which were grouped under this incident are automatically marked as resolved. And I also want to highlight the related incident section here. Etsy Web Infra as a service is registered as technical dependency from many other upstream and downstream services. And in this specific incident, I can clearly see there's one other incident happening in one of my upstream or downstream systems, which could be potentially related to the similar problem I'm dealing with. This insight will help me as an on-call responder to understand the cascading failures in the systems better.
And it's great to see both related incidents and alert grouping working together here to try and make this alert storm easier to handle. And those compression numbers you're showing are spot on. A lot of our larger customers are seeing very similar results. And even for smaller customers where there might not be as much alert data coming through, they're still going to see fairly strong numbers. And it's good to see sort of that spread coming out in what you saw at Etsy. And so I'm curious if you could kind of walk me through a little bit more what the transition from trial to rollout of event intelligence looked like and what some of the results were.
Sure, yeah. So after a successful trial, we signed up for EI, and I'd like to share some of our incident metrics here. One of the KPIs we closely observe is acknowledged to resolve times. And this really represents the effort put in by on-call responders in resolving a page. Higher time means increased on-call burden and toil. So on the left-hand graph, you see the incident and act to resolve metrics before event intelligence. And you can see a slight decrease in the act to resolve times because of all the efforts we were putting in place to reduce our toil. And the right-hand graph shows metrics post-implementing EI from October 2020. You can clearly see a steady decline of act to resolve times for high urgency pages. Though we can't attribute 100% of this decline to EI alone, I can say Event Intelligence played a major role to drive down toil for our engineers. One metric which I want to point out is approximately 3,500 hours of active resolve time in July 2020 is reduced down to approximately 600 hours in April 2021, and that's significant. One other KPI we closely follow is mean and median and P95 times to resolve. On the left-hand graph, which is representing pre-EI, you can see our P95s and median time to resolve are slowly increasing, which in turn represents increase in alert storms and on-call toil. On the right-hand graph, you can see a steady decline in our P95 times to resolve post we enable EI in October 2020. And one of the reasons we are seeing the decline is during alert storms, on-call responders don't have to manually resolve hundreds of incidents.
And so, Kishore, I'm curious, on average, how long did it take for teams to start noticing these kinds of results?
Yeah, I think for high volume services, we could see the effect of event intelligence almost whenever the alert storm happens. It's like instantaneous at some level. And for low volume services, within our setup, we've seen it in action when we had cascading failures. I also want to close out by sharing some of our learnings we had from EI. Intelligent grouping uses various insights to group the incidents. It could be confusing as most of the magic is done by some AI modeling running in PagerDuty. But when you enable EI on day one, you will not have enough model data for it, and there's a chance that your alerts are not grouped right. One thing we did explicitly in the first few weeks after enabling EI is to manually grouping and ungrouping the alerts to train the model. And as I mentioned earlier, one nice thing about AI is a low barrier for entry and almost near zero operational burden to set up. So testing these changes on your production services will not cause any disruption. Event intelligence is extremely powerful for high volume services. If you have a low incident volume service, like having like 2 or 3 pages a day, you might not get a full benefit of intelligent grouping, though like related incidents are still powerful to use. Awesome. Thank you for having me today. And I hope you all learned a thing or two from our experience with event intelligence. And if any of these interests you, or if you're excited about our mission of making commerce human and want to work on challenging problems at scale, we're hiring at Etsy. There are more than 50 engineering positions open across Etsy. And in fact, I'm hiring for my team as well. Feel free to reach me out on Twitter or LinkedIn at Kishore Yekkanti. Thank you.
Thanks, Kishore. This has been great. And for folks who are interested in learning more about event intelligence or want to see a demo, feel free to drop by the AIOps booth. And there's going to be lots of folks there who are going to be happy to talk to you and fill you in on some more details.